Hi, I'm Talicza.
And I'm Rachael, and this is Transatlantic Crime, a true crime podcast that covers stories from each side of the pond. Every week, we will both cover a separate story with a running theme.
Disclaimer, this podcast will contain swearing and details that some people may find offensive. If you are of a sensitive disposition, listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Transatlantic Crime.
Crime. So close.
Whatever.
Fucking whatever. This week has been absolute trash.
What a week.
What a week.
Talicza.
You've
What
been
a
to,
week.
well, for me, you've been to Disneyland.
Yeah, but already this week, I was exhausted and I was considering not going to Disneyland because I was like, I don't know if I can handle it. And I couldn't.
I don't want to
Talicza.
go. Did it have Star Wars stuff there?
Yeah, it
Oh,
was
that's
really cool. It was worth it.
It's like £100 a ticket as well. It's so expensive.
It's so expensive, and the only reason I went and the only reason I forced myself to go was because I got a free ticket.
How? They bought your ticket? Did those people buy your ticket for you?
No, my friend is visiting from London, and she works for Disney, and they get free tickets for any of the parks around the world.
Okay, let's hit her up.
Well, she has to be
'Cause
there.
they're so expensive. I can be her. Fuck.
I can pretend to have her accent.
You don't want to know how far I'll go.
It is magical, but it did break me. I mean, we left at 7:30 in the morning and we didn't come back till 10:30 at night.
Did you drink at all?
I did not drink any alcohol.
Oh, that's the worst.
No, I think that would have made it worse because I was so tired by the end of it. If I had drank, I would have felt 10 times worse.
Yeah, it's a hard one to
And
call.
you're in the sun. You're in the sun and there's kids everywhere and
there's some guy in like a goofy costume coming up to you and you're like, what the fuck do you want?
No, I wanted that to happen.
Really? I hate those guys.
My friend at work, he was like, Rachael, I'll give you $5 for every person you take a picture with characters. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted.
Done.
Talicza, it's so hard to get pictures with them because they're so popular with the kids.
Stupid
and they're
kids. Get out of my way.
Stupid kids.
There's money in this for me. All I'm killing is your hopes and dreams.
And you're not into the Marvel stuff, are you?
No way, baby. Oh. That's why I was able to get a picture with Tom Holland because I don't care.
I mean, for anyone who is into that stuff, that part of the park is pretty cool. And they had like Captain America walking around and Loki. None of the I didn't see any of the female superheroes.
They would just get abused.
No, they're mostly just like standing behind like this chain link because I think people do abuse them. So you could like go up and take a picture with them, but they're behind like a chain linked thing so that you can't actually go up to them.
Don't touch me. Yeah, I assume they get a lot of ass grabbing. I would assume.
Right.
Yeah.
So many people have crushes on Loki, so you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you seem tired.
I'm tired. I think you could tell it in my voice. At Disneyland, every night there's fireworks.
Wow.
Every night.
That really is magical. Like the castle at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, it is. And it is behind the castle. It's like behind the actual Disney castle.
Right, okay, well, that is quite magical.
Well, it's at 9 p.m. every night, so we had to wait till 9 p.m. and then we could leave. And then everyone leaves after that. By like 6 p.m., I was like, I'm ready to go home to bed.
Isn't it in Anaheim as well? So it's quite far away from California. So
it's about a...
Not California, sorry, LA.
LA, yeah. It's about a 45-minute drive if traffic isn't too bad.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
That's like me going to like Longleat. So if anybody is from around these parts, they'll know what Longleat Safari Park is. And it's fucking brilliant.
Are there fireworks every night?
No, but there's a bit where you can drive where like monkeys like get on your car and rip stuff off.
That's amazing.
Yep. Camels like just shove their head in your car and you're just like, ah!
Do you get like a bag of peanuts that you can feed them?
Do you? I think you used to get food, but then I think that really did cause damage to the cars or whatever. So they were like, "Nah,
Oh
fuck it. It's
no.
too like it excites the animals too much. You're just gonna have to make it like a straight through trip."
Yeah.
Yeah, I fucking love that place.
You know what we should do while you're here? If you don't want to go to Disney, we can go on a safari wine tour because there's so many like wine tours around LA or around California.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think they have giraffes. Yeah,
What? This
we
is
should
so
do that.
weird. Yeah. What the fuck? I've known you for ages. Why have you never mentioned this?
I don't know. I don't think of all the things we can do in LA all the time.
Oh my god. Yeah, because you know L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology fame?
Of course I do.
I've heard of him. I know of his work. I was thinking, why is he not buried in LA? I thought, where is his grave? Like he must be
Where is it?
around.
Is it in Clearwater, Florida?
Nope. Do you want to guess again?
Where is it?
My dad told me actually because I was talking to him about it because he's a bit obsessed with Scientology as well.
So it's not Los Angeles. Is it in California?
No, it's a bit of a trick question, really.
What? He's not buried.
Well,
Is that it?
he's buried at sea. They like threw his ashes into the sea, into the Pacific
Oh.
Ocean. And I was like, I've been in the Pacific Ocean. Like, I've probably touched a bit of Ron Hubbard corpse.
I mean, more than that, how many corpses are in the ocean? I think about
That's
that
true.
all
There's
the
like a lot.
time. Anytime I go to a large body of water, I'm like, how many dead bodies am I swimming with right now?
Yep, that's a good
Sorry,
point.
everyone.
Well, you've ruined that for me. I used to only go in when I went abroad to like Indonesia, I went ankle deep because I was like, there's fucking sharks, urchins, jellyfish.
Yeah.
Everything in here wants to fucking kill or hurt me or eat me. No, like I'm not meant to be in here. And like
This is not for humans.
Sydney has had a recent shark attack where someone died, and like this has been like the
Really?
second one this year or something. Rachel,
Yeah.
you must respect the sea.
You really must. L. Ron Hubbard's ashes are in there.
Exactly. Fuck.
Well, isn't part of Scientology that they think that he's gonna come, kind of like Jesus, like he's gonna come back?
Yep.
And there's the building, the Scientology building in LA where they have like his room ready
Mm-hmm.
anytime.
Yeah.
How are you gonna come back if your ashes are in the ocean?
Well, your body is just the container for your spirit, right? You have to get off all your thetans, which are like all your shit stuff that's like attached to you,
Demons.
like demony
Yeah.
type things. You get rid of all of those, and then you go clear, leave your body,
Mm-hmm.
and turn into something else. Apparently, like Tom Cruise is OT whatever, and
Yeah.
he's like the highest level because he's got the most money. And he could, because it costs so much money to get to that level, and he's probably the only person in the
Yeah.
world that can afford it. So apparently, he can leave his body and like do stuff. So I guess they just thought then they weren't really burning Ron Hubbard, they were burning his corpse, and his spirit is
All right.
somewhere.
Okay. Until he drops back down into somebody else's body, I guess.
Yeah, if you ever listen to it's called Scientology Fair Game, and
Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
Leah Remini and Mike Rinder.
Yeah.
Mike Rinder was the guy who would go mental at people. Leah Remini was the girl from King of Queens, and I love
Mm-hmm.
her. She's so funny. They do like question and answer ones, and I was thinking about writing in and seeing if my question got answered,
Ooh.
but I've just got
What
so many
question would you
questions.
ask?
Well, one of them was going to be like, where is L. Ron Hubbard buried? Even though I know the answer, I kind of want them to like explain it a bit more.
Yeah, you want them to get into it.
Yeah, and like who was at the funeral, and is there a special Scientology funeral? And they must have, every religion has, I don't know, like rituals.
Like shrines and stuff.
Yeah, and the weirdest thing, right? We were watching this program about gypsies the other day, like Romany
Mm-hmm.
gypsies, and apparently they've got a special name for it, but like they don't ever, even though they've got a toilet in their caravan, they don't ever shit in their own caravan
Oh,
or piss
okay.
in their own
So it's
caravan.
like a cleanliness thing?
Yeah. and they never, like, say for example that you used a tea towel to like wipe up the kitchen, you would never
Yeah.
wash that with your regular clothes because that's like really dirty.
Oh, okay.
So I was just thinking about like weird, not weird, but like, customs that people have that
Sure,
we don't
sure.
really think about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about like when you're Catholic and you have Lent, you don't eat meat on Fridays and
Really?
you're supposed to fast for 40 days. Not fast, but like you're not supposed to eat between meals. And I still do that just because I'm so used to doing it. I feel weird
Really?
eating meat on Fridays during Lent.
Really? That's so weird.
Yeah,
Is
especially
that
when
where
you
Fish
think about
Fridays
it.
come? Do they not count meat as fish?
Yeah, that's where Fish Fridays come from.
Yeah. Because having
Yeah.
fish on a Friday is like quite a traditional English thing. Like, didn't really
Right.
like connect it with religion. I just thought it was like what we did,
Yeah.
but it's a
Yeah.
religious thing.
Yeah.
Did you watch The Tinder Swindler?
I watched most of it.
Okay.
I think that we should talk about it in a Patreon episode.
Okay, well, I can't remember the lady's name, but she commented on our Facebook being like, I tuned in being like, Rachel's gonna watch The Tinder Swindler, we're gonna hear what she thinks, and then nothing happened. So I was like,
I keep
fuck,
thinking about that. We do that a lot where
we
we're like,
better
okay,
cover
we'll
this.
talk about this next week. And
Yeah.
then we didn't. But I think that's a good save for our Patreon episode.
All right, sorry. But
Sorry,
I mean like,
listener.
okay, well we can talk about romance scams in general.
Yes, I like that.
So
For our
like,
Patreon episode?
no, I was just gonna say now.
Oh. Oh.
Because I think like the main question is like, would you fall for it? Like that's the question, isn't it?
I think there's definitely times where I'm vulnerable, wanting connection.
Yeah.
And there's just people who are swindlers take advantage of that and they get their claws in.
Yeah, it's true. And plus they're like, yeah, they're like predators, like they can see the weak. They can
Mm-hmm.
smell like it on people. Oh, do you know what I have been watching on
Right.
Netflix? Inventing Anna.
Oh, yeah. I've been
I've
wanting to watch that too.
It's pretty good and trashy, and like it's made me really interested in the real story because it is a real
Yeah.
story. That Rockefeller guy did it, didn't he? Do you remember? Ages ago. Loads of
Yeah.
people, it's like an age-old like con. Loads of people pretend to be heiresses or heirs, and they have a trust fund, and they're like, as soon as I get my trust fund, I'll give you the money back.
Right. Yeah. It's such a like American thing too sometimes because it's like fake it till you make it, aim for your biggest goals, American dream. Like
Yeah.
it's in line with the Theranos woman
Oh my God,
who
yeah. Elizabeth
just
Holmes.
Elizabeth Holmes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like fake it till you make it. You're almost delusional or you're a complete con man.
There's quite a cool theme running through Inventing Anna though, where she's like, if a man did this, they'd fucking get away with it and no one would
Yeah.
care, and
Yeah.
they would just there's no consequences, like
Right.
because I lied, I'm a bitch, basically. Like,
But really though?
I mean,
Really?
I have to say, with the Theranos, like Elizabeth Holmes case, I think there are probably men who have done Ponzi schemes that have managed to get away with it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein, I don't think he ever really got in trouble for his Ponzi schemes, but he did do Ponzi
No,
schemes.
very little. Very
Yeah.
little trouble. Mhm.
Also, sorry to be like pinballing around, but someone else fucking died because of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
How? I mean, right, let's get the story up because if people don't know, then
Jean-Luc Brunel.
Jean-Luc Brunel, thank you, because otherwise I would have just been Googling Epstein dead friend. Right, okay. So he's a French Swiss film director,
Mhm.
and he was in prison for. Oh, he was a French model scout. So
Yep.
he's clearly a fucking pervert.
Yep.
This is the Mail Online, so I really do apologize because this is just the scummiest paper in the world. But like, they're so good at true crime because they don't care what they print.
I know.
They
I
have
get
like a
sucked into all of
murderino
them.
there that is fantastic at like getting all the goss,
Yeah.
like, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, some of it isn't true, but like 99% of it is. They just haven't managed to prove it yet. So, okay,
Yeah.
so They've described him as Jeffrey Epstein's pimp. So that's like
Mm-hmm.
he hung himself alone in a Paris jail with no CCTV. Ghislaine
Did
Maxwell's
he?
did he? Ghislaine Maxwell's family is shocked and scared for her as a man who procured 1,000 women for a paedophile financier dies days after Andrew's deal.
Prince Andrew.
Yeah, he made
Prince
an out of
Andrew
court deal, right? Was
paid
it
off.
12
Yeah.
million or 10 million? I think it was 10 million pounds, $12 million,
Yeah. Yeah.
which the Queen will probably pay most of because she paid his legal
Which is your
costs.
tax money, right?
Yep, so I'm literally defending a
Mm-hmm.
paedophile with my money, and this week I've had some family drama where paedophiles have been defended, so it's just like,
Yeah.
fuck. It just
yeah,
really stings. Yeah, he was basically just part of their underage sex ring, this
I
guy.
know all about it. I'm working on a show that
Has this
has
changed the what is it called? Trajectory of your show any?
I don't probably
Yeah,
because I can't talk about it because
so
I really want to
annoying.
talk about it, but
Do you know when you can
yeah,
talk about
like
it?
I
Rachel's a
really
big
want to talk
deal and
about
she works on secret documentaries.
I'm not a big deal. I'm a cog in the wheel of the people who are big deals.
I'm only yanking your plank, mate.
When it comes out, then maybe we'll do like a special episode about
Well,
it
fuck yeah,
because
you haven't even
we
told
haven't
me.
we haven't really gone into the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. I feel like that's because there's so many podcasts and TV shows about it, but yeah, when it comes out, then we'll do an episode.
It just like talking about it angers me so much because I know
Yeah.
that like the Me Too movement has changed a lot. It's one word against the other, and we live in a patriarchy, so men usually win. Women are made out to be sluts, or they asked for it, or
Mhm.
XYZ, like over sexualized. Ugh, just I'm so
Yeah.
exhausted.
And Ghislaine Maxwell is in the middle of it and she won't say anything and
I
yeah.
mean, like that scares me. Like she must be fucking scared because the person who she was supposedly in love with is dead.
And she
Like,
knows so many people. I mean, she knows Prince Andrew. She knew Jean-Luc Brunel.
was he a big deal before he died? Because I'd never heard of him.
He was in that circle. He, on the same level as like
Yeah,
knowing a lot of people, and I'm pretty sure he knew Prince Andrew as well.
yeah. Well, they were all knocking around, weren't they?
They were all the way to the
Oh,
top, Talissa.
all the way to the top. You awful, awful. Oh God, I've just had like a new prison cell. It's not very nice. I obviously know it's not meant to be, but it's pretty fucking low key. Right, okay.
Well, speaking of prison cells, shall we get into our episode this week?
Yeah, mine's a meaty one, but you're going first.
Mm.
So off you go. What is our theme?
Our theme this week is new evidence.
New evidence emerged
New
is,
evidence emerged. Okay.
but we could just call it new evidence. I mean, you do the editing and you put the titles in, so you put whatever you want. What am I going to do about it?
I could change it to whatever I want.
What am I going to do? Write back in capital letters.
Yeah. Okay, so my story this week is about the Waverly Two. Have you heard of them?
Ooh, no. And do you know what? These are the best because you know how sometimes you say you like conspiracies and unsolved shit? I like
Mm.
people getting nailed years later when they
Well,
think they
this is
got
the
away with it.
opposite.
Oh
This
God.
is the opposite. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a lot of twists and turns. It's actually a really interesting and kind of infuriating story, and that's why I did it.
Okay.
So on the morning of April 25th, 1998, Officer Alan Gibson was on foot patrol near the Waverly Village apartment complex in Waverly, Virginia.
Okay.
If you don't know where Virginia is, it's on the East Coast. That's where Washington, D.C. is.
Oh, okay, I'm with you.
So he either got a call for a possible drug deal in the woods behind the apartments, or he was following two men he believed were dealing drugs. So Officer Gibson went alone to investigate. There he found two male suspects in the middle of a drug deal. Officer Gibson confronted the suspects, and a struggle ensued where he was shot by his own gun. The
Whoa.
bullet struck the edge of his bulletproof vest, and
Oof.
he was shot in the abdomen. The suspects fled, and 25-year-old Gibson, who had already called backup, waited for an ambulance. Gibson spoke to a state trooper as he was taken to the hospital, saying that his handgun, in quotes, just went off. He was able to give some description of the assailants, saying that there were 2 of them
Okay.
and that they were black. Unfortunately, Officer Alan Gibson died from his wounds in the hospital that day. He
Ugh.
left behind a wife and an 8-year-old daughter.
Those are pretty
So,
different stories. Like, he either ran in or he was, did you say he was
yeah,
going to do a drug deal or he
no,
ran
he
in
he
to
was just
interrupt one?
yeah, he ran in to interrupt one. He was suspicious that something was happening. There were some kind of spotty information around this
Yeah.
whole story that it was hard to find. So there was no explanation of like why did he go in there. He was just suspicious of 2 guys, I think. He didn't get a call.
Don't be a hero on your own, man. There's 2 on 1. That's what I'd
Yeah,
say.
and he's 25 years old. He sounds like he's probably a new cop.
Just got out of Cop
So,
Academy? Police
Police Academy?
Academy 5.
Yeah, so I think maybe he was just like trying to do a good job, like a young whippersnapper trying to catch a
Yeah.
drug deal in the middle of it.
Okay.
So police began searching the area, and investigators undertook what can only be described as a roundup of many young black men in the area.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Black males in Waverly, Virginia were gathered and interrogated until they provided the investigators with names or submitted to a lie detector test. They rounded up a lineup and someone was chosen, but
Okay.
they ignored it.
Right.
They
Okay.
ignored that witness choosing someone. And then 2 men were arrested for the murder. And this part also was hard to find. It was like, what made the police choose these 2 men? There wasn't really much information on that.
Gut. Gut instinct.
But they were, I don't know, they were 2 black guys, 27-year-old Terrence Richardson and 22-year-old Ferone Claiborne. Men who were not identified in the police lineup, but they were in the police lineup, but they weren't identified.
What was the point in
It
the
isn't
lineup?
clear.
Fuck's sake. What a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah, it really is. It isn't clear what made police zero in on the men, potentially their connection to selling drugs in the area, but
Yeah.
both men were arrested for their connections to drug crimes. So that was the only information that I could get. Like they had some connection to selling drugs and they were black. So
It's so frustrating, isn't it, when you can't get what you need? The info.
yeah.
You're like, why?
Well, I think it's frustrating for everyone involved, especially the 2 guys that were arrested,
Yeah.
Terrence and Ferron. Both men denied having anything to do with the murder. They both said neither of them were in the area. That's it. Initially, Terrence and Ferron pled not guilty to the charges lodged against them. Despite this, the 2 were coerced into taking guilty pleas to avoid the death penalty in the state case.
Oh, yeah, because when you kill a cop, like, it's nearly always a death penalty, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And this is 1998, and things were different back then.
Yeah.
So on December 8th, 1999, in fear of the death penalty and at the urgency of inadequate attorneys, they accepted unprecedented plea deals for anyone suspected of killing a police officer. Ferron, who couldn't afford to continue a trial to prove his innocence, was told specifically that if he pled guilty for a misdemeanor as an accessory to the murder, that he could go home that day.
Is that a lie?
So he pled, well, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
So he pled to involuntary manslaughter and accessory. Terrence was told by his lawyer, if you go to trial and you mess around and you lose, you could get the death penalty. So he pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter.
On what planet is it like where the options are you're guilty or you're guilty? You're either less
Mm-hmm.
guilty or you're dead. You're obviously going to
Yeah,
choose the less guilty, but they're both shit
right.
options.
And both men they had state given attorneys, so they didn't have the best.
Literally, all they've got in their
And
briefcases is like chewing gum and like a Tic Tac.
yeah, an orange to peel
Yeah,
during court.
like a 1,000 pens with their name on because they ordered too many.
Here, have one. Um,
You are going to
yeah,
get the death penalty. Would you like a pen?
that's all I can offer you right now.
Yeah.
So, their trials proved that there was a major lack of evidence pointing to either of the men. And this is where the crappiness of their attorneys comes in, because if they had looked at the lack of evidence, then they could have fought for a not guilty plea anyway.
Well, I haven't heard any evidence so far, apart from the fact that they're
Yeah.
black. And they like
Well, there were
drugs.
drugs involved. And
Yeah.
also, I should say that I think it was Terrence. He said, and I think I say this later on, but he only ever sold weed, and that's the minorest of drug selling. Although I
Definitely.
guess in the 90s it was all viewed as the same, in the same
I suppose so.
bag.
The class in England of weed has changed so many times. It's like B to a C to an A to a B to like you either get in
Oh,
loads of
you mean
trouble or no
like
trouble at all.
if you get in trouble? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Depends who's in
Gotcha.
government, really.
Yeah. Just make it legal. It's so helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I don't think it'll happen in this country.
I'm coming from California where it's legal, so.
California love.
Oh, did you watch the Super Bowl halftime show?
No. Why would I do that?
That's the only thing that I watched. It was really good.
Apparently it was for the millennials. Like there was loads of
Yes. It had Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Dre, Mary J.
that is a fucking
Blige,
banger of a lineup.
50 Cent.
Slapper of a
Yeah, you should
lineup.
watch it.
Yeah,
You
alright.
should check it out on YouTube.
You
It's
convinced
pretty
me.
good.
Okay.
Okay, so back to the story. Their trials proved that there was a major lack of evidence pointing to either of the men. There were no fingerprints on the gun, no blood, hair, or DNA that linked either of the men to the murder. Also, you would think that, and they were arrested very shortly after what had happened, you would think that there would be some blood somewhere.
Well, it seems like a close-up
Someone's
shooting.
shoe.
And
Yeah.
it's a police gun, so it's not like a shitty little piece of shit handgun, so I'm sure there'll be some blowback.
Right, yeah. The very little evidence that they did have was contaminated, and the only witness who said he was the third man on the drug deal and he saw it all happen was a convicted felon once on record as saying that he didn't know anything about the murder. So
So you're
that's
just trying
another
to get
part
some
of
time
this.
off.
Yeah, that happens now and it happens later on where they just had people who were already in prison saying like, "Oh yeah, I was a witness."
Oh, stick your beak out.
Yeah. And also, side note, they didn't have any fingerprints on the gun because the police chief, when he came to the scene, he picked up the gun and put it in his car.
What?
He didn't just leave it because he said that he came from the military and there were other police around, and he said his military brain just came in and he picked up the gun because he didn't want anyone else to get shot. He
Why the
didn't
fuck
just
are you
want
the
a gun
chief?
lying around. I don't know.
Just leave it on the floor. Like, nobody's going to shoot anyone. If you're all trained, nobody's going to go, ooh, a
Yeah.
gun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so annoying.
I think he was just it was like a not panic mode, but like emergency mode, like
Was
get the
not
dangerous
thinking.
thing out of the way. So that is why there were no fingerprints on the gun, which would have helped identify who actually shot Officer Gibson.
Very much so.
So, a jury acquitted Terrence and Ferrone of the crimes.
Wow, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Officer Gibson's family believed that the two men were the murderers, as they had pled guilty, and so they were really unhappy with the trial outcome. And so, a few days after the trial, records showed that the FBI were asked to investigate, so they're making it a federal case.
How can they do that? Do you know? Is it because it involves a police officer?
I think, yeah, because it involves law enforcement, and that's another thing that is very iffy around this. Not much information. It's just like,
Yeah, like
how
there is
did
no
all of a
reason for them to
sudden?
get involved, really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they're only supposed to get involved if it's cross state lines or certain felonies or on
I
federal
think
land,
that,
right?
yeah, but
You can
I
ask
think
them.
this
You
is
can ask them to
why.
get involved, can't you? If you're the
You
family.
can. I think so. Maybe the family had some
Yeah,
connections. Again, this is like black against white. It's like
yeah.
um another case of just unfairness, racism. But anyways, here's what the FBI did. A year after the plea deal in 2000, Terrence and Ferrone were indicted on federal drug charges. That was conspiracy to sell crack cocaine. And then on top of that, because they couldn't do double jeopardy, they couldn't charge
Yeah,
them again for the
yeah,
murder. So
yeah,
they tacked on a federal murder charge for the
yeah.
murder of Officer Gibson.
Hmm.
And I think that that's why it was brought in federally, because it was crack cocaine. That was the only reason, I think.
It's like with OJ, not saying that these guys are guilty and OJ wasn't guilty. Like I believe OJ was guilty, but OJ,
Yeah.
he got acquitted for killing Nicole and pretty sure it was,
Ron Goldman.
yeah, Nicole and Ron Goldman. He
Hmm.
definitely killed them, but he got off with it. And then later on, he got put in prison for stealing. Or it was like
Yeah.
they called it like armed robbery, so they gave him like a shitload of time. When
Yeah.
usually he wouldn't
Yeah.
have got that, but it was like, okay, we couldn't get you for the murder, but we'll fucking get you for this. So it was just
Right.
like they just like kind of bending the law for their needs.
Right. Which is very similar to what they did here. And again, they were caught for conspiracy to sell crack cocaine, and neither of the men were involved in that anyway.
Oh,
They weren't selling hard drugs. They were selling weed. It's funny because it's like, I feel like I know so many people who in our early 20s were like, yeah, I sell weed. I
yeah,
sold weed.
I know
It was
loads of people
like,
now.
now even, yeah. It's a lower level than selling coke or selling any of the harder drugs.
I kind of feel I might be being naive, but I kind of feel like with Coke, that it's run by like the origin of Coke is like cartels in Mexico and Southern America,
Mm,
right? That's like the
yeah.
main place that cocaine comes from. And
Right.
obviously that's quite a lawless place and they have loads of fucking crime there as a result of it and drug
Mhm.
runners that are killed and da da da. So like
Yeah.
when people do a line in a club, they don't think about all of the background that has all the crime and things that have gone on to get you that drug. Whereas like weed
Yeah.
is kind of like grown in a field somewhere and then
Or you can grow it in your
oh yeah,
house.
you can grow it in your
Like,
house. The way that it's made and the way that it's produced and the way that it's distributed is a lot less risky in terms of criminality and like morally, I feel
right.
like it's a lot less dodgy. Like it's definitely not my drug of choice. Like I don't get on with it at
Right.
all. But me and Carly were discussing this, like in England weed is crap. It's just skunky, shitty
Yeah.
tar or
Right.
like it's all like indica and you're all like you just feel sick or tired. I've smoked weed in America where it's legal and I've just been like laughing and having a really good time, which is like
Mhm.
what it
Mhm.
should be. Like that's what it's like with that's what it's like when Seth Rogen does it in the films. Like why is it not like that for me? Um,
There's so many different kinds here and so many different choices. Also, side note, Seth Rogen has his own weed line now.
I fucking bet he
So,
does. He's fucking obsessed. He's obsessed. It's his whole personality.
he
He might as
is.
well walk around dressed like a weed leaf. He's just so obsessed with it. Like,
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. I've just always viewed it as such a lesser offense than selling any other type of drugs, because there's less danger involved. It's
yeah.
you can grow a little plant in your bedroom and sell it to your friends, and that's it. Nobody's hurt. Nobody gets hurt. No, there's no like people shoving condoms of coke into their abdomens, or
I really
you
didn't think
know.
you were going to say abdomen. But yeah.
And that's kind of, it sounds like these two guys, like that's just what they were doing. They were those guys who were possibly selling weed and nothing really else. They had no other connection. But despite that, they were charged for conspiracy to sell crack cocaine, as well as the murder of Officer Gibson federally. Despite, again, the lack of evidence, including never actually finding crack cocaine on either of the men, with Terrence even
Wow.
saying that he only ever sold weed, not cocaine.
How do you get
Both,
away with this? This is crazy.
I mean, the FBI were involved. There was something there. Again, really hard to find like what the actual evidence was that got them charged, but they were both convicted of the drug charges. The federal jury found the men not guilty of the murder. And one of the quotes from an article, they interviewed someone from the jury and they were like, none of us thought that they were guilty of the murder. Maybe the drug charges, but not murder.
No.
Yeah, the federal jury found the men not guilty of the murder, but the judge, in an unusual decision, dismissed the jury and then overruled the jury decision and used the men's state guilty pleas, where they said that they were guilty of connection in the murder, and sentenced Terrence and Ferrone to life in prison.
What? That's so shit.
Yeah. So that was in 2002. They were charged with life in prison for the murder and for the drug charges. So they were in prison. In 2017, Virginia news station WRIC 8 News revisited the story of the Waverly Two. That's what they were called now.
Okay.
Who by then had spent about 15 years in prison. They continued to claim their innocence. 8 News, during their investigation into the story, obtained a transcript of a state police interview with one of the first deputies on the scene. He states that Officer Gibson's last words were, "They have dreadlocks and one had a ponytail." 8 News also found that there were 2 witnesses that were immediately known to the police of the time of the murder: a 10-year-old girl who was playing nearby with her 5-year-old cousin, and a 15-year-old girl who called 911 after hearing the gunshot. One of the witnesses' written statements even corroborated what Officer Gibson said, stating that they saw a man with dreadlocks running from the scene.
Okay.
At the time of the murder, Terrence was short. He's short in stature with a slender build, and he had closely cropped cornrows braided towards the back of his head. He even stated that he never wore dreadlocks because he didn't like them. Ferrone is tall with a slender build and a bald haircut. Neither Terrence nor Ferrone matched the description of either assailant as described by Officer Gibson or the witnesses. This was not used in their trials.
Well, fuck.
Terrence and Ferrone continued to appeal their sentencing. Jarrett Adams, he was himself, you might recognize his name. He was himself wrongly convicted at the age of 17 of a crime and jailed for 10 years. And then he became an attorney after his conviction was reversed and he was freed. Yeah, he picked up the men's case and he began representing them in 2017.
Oh, I love this guy. Is there a film of this guy? There has to be.
No, he wrote a book though. He wrote
There
a
will
book.
be. This is your film, Rachel. This is HBO.
Well, I don't know if there will be a film because he was accused of rape. He went to a college party when he was 17 years old. He made out with a girl, and then I think he just like left the party or something. And then because he was black, then I think that girl, she said that she was raped and there was a witness and the witness statement wasn't used and it wasn't him. I just don't think that there will be like a movie surrounding that because I don't think people make films about rape convictions that were overturned.
Okay, you're the expert.
I think in the Me Too era, I think that's like an iffy thing, but you can read his book.
Yeah, we could pop
Maybe
it on
I'll
the
add
list.
it. His book is called Redeeming Justice: From Defendant to Defender, My Fight for Equity on Both Sides of a Broken System.
You can tell he's a lawyer because that is too long of a title for a book. Like, that is a lawyer title for a book.
It's
Come
all
on.
explained
This
in the
needs to be
title.
snappier. Like, if I were,
Yeah.
what publisher let that fly? Come on.
Well, we'll see if we can add it to our book list, which you can check out in our show notes. We have a link. If you're a new listener, we have a bunch of links. We should really be pushing our links more. We have a book list, we have merch, we
Yep.
have a Patreon, we have
Yeah.
our socials.
You can buy us a
Go to
coffee
the
if you
show
want.
notes. Buy us
You
a
can just give
coffee.
us
Yep.
money. That's an option. That's always an option.
We would love that.
And we have a little nest egg going on. We've just collected all our Patreon money, and we're going to use it in May when I go and see Rachel in LA.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're going
We're going to
to
do
use
some
it.
fun stuff for content.
Yes. Right.
Back to the episode. So yeah, Jarrett Adams, he starts representing them, and they start digging further after the 8 News had like uncovered this evidence of a witness statement and a transcript. Then they start digging further into the case. In April of last year, 2021, on top of what 8 News had brought forward in 2017, new evidence was uncovered in the decade old. So now it's like almost 10 years old.
Okay.
That evidence was a photo lineup in which a witness picked out a man with dreadlocks, not Terrence or Ferrone, which is what I had mentioned at the beginning.
Dreadlocks were always there.
Yeah. The last piece of evidence was an anonymous... I'm going to read that again. Can't read. The last piece of evidence was an anonymous tip left on a Virginia State Police answering machine naming the same man identified in the photo lineup.
Okay.
So Jarrett Adams said, "We know that this suspect was never interviewed by the Commonwealth's attorney." Also in Virginia, they say Commonwealth rather than district attorney. So
Why? Do you know
just
why?
a side note there.
Does it matter?
I think in Virginia because it was one of the first
one of the first
states
British
then
establishments.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that they still just
Fucking far,
traditionally
though.
use
Why would you choose there? Just settle in New
don't
York
know.
and leave it at that. It's like 6 hours rather than
Yeah.
a million years.
I don't know. But anyways, yeah, that's just a side note for the rest of the story because I say
Okay.
Commonwealth a lot and I was like, why are they saying Commonwealth and not like district or state attorney?
That's some
Anyways,
historical
that's why.
shit.
That's what they do in
Yeah.
Virginia. Yeah. So in an affidavit, the Commonwealth's attorney at the time, so at the time of the 1999 trials, David Chappelle wrote to the best of his recollection. He said, "I do not recall receiving information that any person identified someone other than the defendants." Jarrett Adams said none of this information was turned over to the defense. Proof came from an affidavit from Terrence's attorney at the time, David Boone, who said none of this evidence was ever shared with him. He also states that if he had known about it, he would have changed his trial strategy and he would have never advised his client to take the guilty plea deal in state court. So that's just to say that the lawyers at the time didn't know about these pieces of evidence.
Yeah, I was just about to say, well, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, then every day would be Christmas because, well, if I
Yeah.
knew that, then I wouldn't have done that. Well, you didn't know that, did you? So,
Right. Yeah. So not long after the new evidence had officially emerged, Terrence and attorney Jarrett Adams filed a petition to Virginia State and to Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring asking the Virginia Court of Appeal to overturn their state convictions. In referring to the new evidence and evidence not shared with the Commonwealth's attorney or defense, they found that this is a unique case and that it is also clear that no rational fact finder, this is lawyer talk, no rational fact finder would have found Richardson's guilty had that information been presented in his proceeding in state court. So, in November 2021, not too long ago,
let's translate
Terrence
that.
and Ferrone...
No one would believe that. That's all he
Yeah.
said. That's what he said.
No one would have thought.
No one would have believed you. Yeah.
So, in November of 2021, Terrence and Ferrone filed a petition asking that a Virginia court overturn the conviction of at least one of the men in the case, and that's Terrence. In court documents, Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring, wrote in support, the Commonwealth submits that Mr. Richardson should be granted a writ of actual innocence. Ferrone couldn't be in that because he pled as like an accessory and it was a lesser charge. So,
Yeah.
and they charged Terrence with the actual like pulling the trigger. So, according to the brief filed by Herring, in the event that appeals court does not agree, Herring asked the court to order an evidentiary hearing on the new evidence. Ferrone's conviction was for a misdemeanor that is not eligible for a writ. However, if the court agrees to the writ of actual innocence, attorney Jarrett Adams will file in federal court to have the convictions and sentences overturned for both men. That was a mouthful, but basically saying if they find Terrence not guilty, then they're going to file for Ferrone to also appeal to be not guilty. He should be under the same umbrella.
Yeah, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah. So in an email, Terrence, who's now 50 years old, he wrote to the news not long after.
His life are gone.
I know. Sad. He wrote to the news not long after the appeals announcements were made this past December. In the email, he said, "This has been some of the best news we've had in a long time. I pray to be home very soon."
Aww.
He also thanked everyone who fought for both of them, and he hopes for the Gibson family that they find the real killer. Again, it's like that's what they kept saying this whole time. The two guys were like, you guys are looking at us, and there's the real guy out there that did this. However, a new administration took over from Attorney General Mark Herring in 2022, so very recently. Disappointingly, even though Terrence was scheduled for a writ of actual innocence hearing in the U.S. Court of Appeals on February 8th, which was like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
It was postponed at the request of the new Attorney General, Jason Miyares, who pulled their support of Richardson's writ of actual innocence. So before, it was Attorney General Mark Herring who was all for it. He was trying to fight for it. He was writing to the U.S. Court of Appeals saying, like, please let these men have another trial.
It's so
and
shit
the new
that it's
Attorney
political.
General who took over. Yeah,
It shouldn't
it's
be
a lot
political.
of it has to do
it's
with
people's
that.
lives, like.
Right. So they postponed it. Terrence's hearing, it was postponed until February 22nd, which is tomorrow, Tuesday.
Ooh. We could do a Facebook update.
And we could. And this is kind of where the story ends because it's up in the air. But you can go to change.org, and I did this. They filed a petition where you can sign for it. And it will urge the Sussex County. I will. It will urge the Sussex County Commonwealth Attorney Governor of Virginia and United States Attorney to do the following. 1, withdraw the state court guilty pleas, and or 2, grant clemency, and or 3, exonerate Terrence and Ferrone. And that is the story of the Waverly Two. And go sign the change.org petition today when you listen to this episode because it's happening tomorrow. And we'll try and make an update.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, I hope that goes well for them. Oh, I hate I hate American politics and how intertwined they are with crime.
Right. Well, then you might like Jarrett Adams's book because he's like, this is a broken system.
Yeah.
We have to fight for it. And he works for the Innocence Project as well. So there's a lot of people in jail because of that. This is just such an interesting case where, again, they picked black men, charged them for drugs, and looped in murder as well. And I do feel really sorry for Officer Gibson's family because they believe that it was these two men.
Yeah.
And they've always fought for them to stay in prison, which I think is also, it's affecting
where the fuck is Dreadlock
politics
guy?
of it. Yeah, exactly.
He's like fucking shaved his head and hauled ass pretty quick.
Yeah. Or he's in prison for another charge. Like it really sounds like there were just a lot of men in the second trial for the two men. There were a lot of convicted felons who were coming forward being like, yeah, I saw what happened, or I heard what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that is Shit. Okay, well, this one has a proper resolution, so
Ooh, okay.
that's quite satisfying.
Yes, a good
So
end to an episode.
yeah, so this is the really brutal murder of Lynette Deborah White. Okay,
Mm,
so this is frustrating because I there's a podcast called A Killing in Tiger Bay, and
okay.
It's a BBC Wales podcast, and it's really well made because it's BBC Wales, but they focus quite a lot on Tiger Bay, which is an area in Cardiff, and how
Mm-hmm.
multicultural it was, and they kind of dig into like the socio-economic and cultural background of this crime, and it's like
Okay.
I totally get why you need to do that, but I feel like they do that for too long and then you get bored. And then because
Yeah.
I just stopped caring about 6 episodes in. But
Yeah, you're like, get to the juicy stuff.
yeah, I'm like, well, why are you telling me all this, basically?
Right.
Um, so,
Right.
so yeah, for my sources, I use Wikipedia, obviously. And this, I'm like, we were supposed to record like last night, and then
Yeah.
this took me so fucking long to write. It was unbelievable because it's so complicated, but I managed to
Okay.
get it down to like three pages. So,
Okay.
Lynette
Amazing.
Deborah White was born on the 5th of July, 1967. Her mother was called Peggy Farrugia, and that is all I can find about her youth. That is
Oh.
it. So I'm
Oh man.
assuming that she is born out of wedlock in the 60s, and that's why I can't find
Okay.
anything. So she
Hmm.
left school when she was 14 without doing her GCSEs, and then she started sex work, which
Okay.
isn't sex work, it's child rape. I
Yeah.
don't like
Yeah.
people calling it sex work because she is not really getting money and she cannot
And it's
consent.
not
So
really her choice. Yeah.
yeah. She was featured in a documentary about sex trafficking by BBC Wales, which I'm going to try and find, which I
Mm.
haven't found, but I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. And in the documentary, she's like really prominent in it. She's in it loads, and she tells journalist Tim Rogers that she was drugged and taken to Bristol by a gang of men
Oh,
because Bristol is just across the water from Cardiff.
you're not too
So
far from Wales.
no, we're right next door. So
Yeah.
she said that she was drugged and then taken to Bristol, and then she was forced into sex work as a child, and that even after getting back to Cardiff, she was trapped in a continual spiral of prostitution, and those are her words.
Mm.
And by 1988, she was 22, and she worked every day to pay for her live-in boyfriend, Stephen Miller's coke addiction. So that's nice.
Oh.
He was
Yeah.
he was technically her pimp because he took at least half of her income every day.
Oh man.
So he would drive her to
Man,
the
she is just not set up
no,
for success.
she has had a kick in the cunt in terms of luck. So she
Yeah.
took he took at least half of her income, and he would drive her to the red light district in the morning, and then she would work all day, and her friends described her as the most visible sex worker in Cardiff at the time, and they said that
Wow.
they'd see her from lunchtime most days, and she was always the last girl that left at night, and she even worked on
So this is
Christmas Day.
the oh, this is the 80s, right? It must be
Mhm.
the 80s by now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just trying to
1988.
picture like Cardiff
Perm. Think
80s,
perm, fag on.
perms, hairspray.
Yeah. Blue eyeshadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of eyeliner. So a lot of flammable clothing as well. I would make a guess. So
Yeah.
yeah. So she even had to work Christmas Day. Like that's how much her boyfriend doesn't give
Hmm.
a fuck about her and just cares about his money.
Just
So
at that point, they're not your boyfriend.
no, they are your pimp. She was pretty and popular, and she earned about £100 each night, which I always try and work out in today's money because I find that
Hmm.
super interesting. So that's about £285 today. So that's a lot.
That's not too bad.
£300 a day.
Yeah.
That's good money. But for what you have to
Yeah.
do for it and then get half of it taken off you is not cool.
Yeah.
So
Right.
all of a sudden, around the 10th of Feb 1988, nobody could get hold of her on the street. Like nobody saw her
Okay.
around. And not even her boyfriend knew where she was. It was rumoured that she had gone off the radar because she was due to go to court and give evidence in 2 upcoming trials. So everyone thought that she was like, fuck, I'm not doing that. So the first was involving an attempted murder, and the other trial was involving sex charges with a 13-year-old girl. So the police were just convinced that she didn't want to be found, and they put out an arrest warrant for her because she was an essential witness in the trials.
Right.
So they decided to look for her in her friend Leanne Vilday's flat. So Leanne said that she'd given Lynette the keys to her flat so she could take clients there. And since she went missing, she couldn't access her own flat because Lynette had the keys. So she was like, shit, I need to get into my house. So on the 14th of Feb, she got a taxi driver, Eddie Diamond, to take her to the house. And another occupant let her in the main door of the flat, but then she couldn't get into her actual flat. So she decided that like it was time to go to the police, and there was nothing else that could be done. They went to the police, and the police were convinced that she was just hiding out in the flat. So they thought they were going to go and like kick the door in and get their suspect, and that would be that. But when they bust the door down, it was 9:17 p.m. and they found Lynette's body inside, and she was dead. She was discovered.
What happened to her?
This is bad. So brace yourself or skip forward if you don't like gory stuff. She was discovered in a pool of blood between the foot of the bed and the window, and they were the only bits of furniture in the room. Was a bed. Still, she was still clothed, but one of her shoes was off, and there was blood all over the walls and the carpet of the small room. There was very little blood on the mattress, where the police found an opened but unused condom. And forensics found 150 sets of finger and palm prints in the flat. So obviously, people just come and go there all the time.
Yeah.
Semen was present in Lynette's vagina and underwear, but it said like the description of it was like Ezekiel sperm or something, and I was like, okay, what the fuck is that? So I had to look it up. And
what is it?
I was like, my Google history is just it's just an absolute minefield. Like,
I know, same. I use my work computer a lot because it's faster. So I'm always like,
get caught,
man,
people are gonna be like, she's into devil worship. She's fucking like spunk. Like, it's just gonna be a nightmare. So
wants to know what prison is like. Wants to know what's going on with.
She wants to know fucking Ted Bundy's foot size. Like, seriously, it's not my fault. So basically what that means is that there's sperm there, but there's no actual living sperm in it. So it's somebody who's infertile, or they've had a vasectomy.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And because it's 1988, obviously they haven't got much to go on.
Yeah.
Forensics wise. So they've got...
Why is it called Ezekiel? Is that what you said?
No.
Ezekiel?
Oh god, I'll type it. It'll be in my fucking Google. It'll be in my Google. What is it? Azoic sperm? I was like, I can't just say that. People won't know what it means. I was like, if anyone's going to know what it means, it'll be me.
I'm glad you explained it.
Fuck's sake. Did you mean azoospermia? Yes, I did. Google, thanks. Okay, so azoospermia is a medical condition of a man whose semen contains no sperm. It is associated with
How do you spell that?
It exactly how it sounds. So A-Z, like a zoo, a-zoo, and then sperm, and then I-A.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not like particularly scientific. Like, it just, that's why I was like, what?
Yeah. All right. Well, we've learned. I'm going to try and remember that word.
Why?
Because I don't know. It was just an interesting word to
look for it on dating apps.
Yeah. It's gonna come up at some. I'm gonna blurt it out at work at some point, and I want to make sure that I say it correctly.
Azoospermia. Yeah. So anyway, that's what was there.
Okay.
So that's a good clue, right? That's really helpful
for the 80s, for sure.
For the 80s, that's about as good as you're getting. And this was present within 6 hours of her death, and some of the blood was from a male type AB.
Okay.
So that's also good. So really all they've got is like, are you a secretor, a non-secretor, blood type, fingerprints.
Yeah.
They haven't really got
Yeah.
much at all. So they
Right.
they did what they could. I think collecting 150 different sets of finger and palm prints is pretty good as well.
Oh
Like
man.
it's
Yeah.
quite a good because she's a sex worker, so you think they wouldn't be trying so hard, but like hats off to them, they did try. But
Yeah.
okay, so this is the really gruesome bit. So
Okay.
her throat had been cut so deeply that her vertebrae were exposed. She
Wow.
had stab wounds to her chest, breasts, face, stomach, arms, wrists, and inner thighs. 69 in total, which is so
That's
many.
so many, and that sounds personal.
Yeah. She had defensive wounds on her hands as well. And in her
Okay.
autopsy, they described the attack as a mutilating attack with sexual overtones. She'd been
Oh
stabbed
wow.
7 times in the heart, but it was the neck injury which had caused her death. So
Mm.
that suggests to me that, well, you just got to hope that that happened first. And then she
Yeah.
bled out, didn't know anything about the rest of it, which would have been
Right.
the best of a horrific situation. So the coroner said it would require considerable force because the skin, muscles, larynx, and voice box had been cut right down to the neck bone. Her head had probably been held back to sustain such a deep wound.
Yeah.
The murder weapon was thought to have been at least 5 inches long. Time of death was estimated to be between midnight and 4 a.m. But her watch
That's a
had,
pretty big window.
yeah, but everyone knows time of death is just like so fucking hard. Like they're stabbing in the dark with that,
Yeah.
aren't they? They're just like,
Right.
I think it's like based on the
Yeah.
temperature of the body and stuff.
Right.
And like really roughly on rigor mortis as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really hard to work out. So yeah, so her watch had stopped at 1:45 a.m. So police thought that this was the likely time of death. She'd put her arm up to defend herself, and someone had smashed her
Mm.
watch as she'd done it. So it
That's a pretty
stopped.
good clue.
It is a clue, right? So
Yeah.
that is some old school policing. So the
It
South,
is.
so the South Wales CID picked up the case, and they started an appeal for public information. This led to witnesses reporting a white man. Remember this, a white man in his 30s.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
similarities between your story and mine, Rach. Um,
Okay.
in his 30s, who was about 5'8" to 5'10", with a dishevelled appearance. The reports were that he had cuts on his hands and blood on his clothing. So 3 days after the murder, they issued an e-fit on Crime Watch, that classic program.
Yay. Crime
The
Watch.
good. Oh, what was the? It was like I want to go da 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 da, but that's Crystal Maze. That's not Crime Watch. If anyone can remember the Crime Watch song, then please let me know. The
Yeah.
police were almost sure that he was the culprit, and Lynette's boyfriend was cleared that evening because he gave a credible alibi, and he had the
Mm.
clothes that he was seen in the clothes that he was wearing when they picked him up, and he was like
Okay.
squeaky clean, so he didn't have a
What do you
speck of
should
blood
I
on him.
believe that?
Should you?
Damn
Should
it,
you?
Talissa.
So
Teasing.
yeah, so on the 20th of April 1988, a list of 12 people of interest was put together based on their previous criminal activities. One of the men, who could only be named as Mr. X because he was never, they were just trying to defend people, I suppose.
Okay.
He was a convicted sex offender and a paedophile. So that's nice.
Mm.
And he was
Yeah.
known to have visited Lynette, and he had been diagnosed as a psychopath by his doctor. So he's just out in
Okay.
society, so that's great.
Sounds like a great guy to have around.
Fucking hell. Like, why are you allowed to wander around the streets? Apparently, that's not a problem. Sex offender, paedophile, psychopath, on your way, sir. Milk's 42
Yeah.
pence at the shop. Like, what?
It's
So
the 80s, Talissa. People
great.
were thinking about other things.
Fucking hell. So he couldn't account for his movements on the night of Lynette's murder. And crucially, his blood type was AB. So the same blood type as they
Oh,
found at
wow.
the scene.
Yeah.
So there's a constable, and he's called Paul Fish, and he believed that Mr. X was guilty of the murder. And if he had had time to press him, he could have got a confession out of him. But on the 19th of October 1988, Mr. X was placed under surveillance until they had more DNA analysis from the crime scene. But as a result of that DNA analysis, they had to eliminate him from the investigation. So we're like, okay, it's definitely not him. So I don't know what, again, I can't find out what that was. But basically he was cleared. So on the 10th of, so remember this happened on February the 14th/15th. So this is November, a woman called Violet Elizabeth Perriam, she was a secretary at Cardiff Yacht Club, and she gave a statement that she'd been driving home from the club and she passed the flat around 1:30 a.m. on the night of the murder, and she saw 4 excited black men outside the building arguing and gesticulating.
Okay.
She sounds posh, doesn't she? Like, who says
Yes.
excited?
I saw some excited black men.
Yeah,
I was very scared.
gesticulating. And she said that she knew 2 of them. She said they were John Actie and Rashid Omar, who were mixed race. In earlier door-to-door inquiries, John Actie had said that he had been out on the night of the murder and he left the club that he was in at about 3:30 a.m. So the police connected these 2 statements and they were like, right, we've got 2 new suspects. Because those guys know each other, and he said he was out till 3:30 a.m. and she's seen him, so bingo. So then the police interviewed a woman called Angela Salia. She lived opposite the flat and she had an IQ of 55. Keep in mind, Forrest Gump is like 75 and a normal IQ is about 90.
I'm reminded of Brendan Dassey.
Yep. This is
That's
Brendan.
what I'm
I think
picturing.
even Brendan Dassey is higher than that.
Yikes. Okay.
So this is what we're talking. Like, think of Brendan Dassey, but even lower in terms of IQ. So they interviewed her and insisted that she had a part in the crime. I don't know why.
What?
I don't know why they decided that she had a part in the crime. She gave various statements, like she gave a different story every single time, just like Brendan Dassey. Like, she just told them whatever they wanted to hear. And eventually, eventually she just implicated the black men because I think that's what they were trying to like just feed her. So on the same day, 2 other men that had been accused of the crime, but like they had been interviewed for the crime. They were called Gromek and Atkins, and they were gay men, and they lived above the flat that Lynette was found in. And they basically, police said, like, we think you did it. And they said no. And when they found out that there'd been accusations of black men outside the flat, they were like, yeah, we saw black men outside the flat too.
Oh, man.
So everybody jumped on the bandwagon and were like, yeah, it was black guys. On the 7th of December 1988, the police arrested Stephen and Tony Miller. So Stephen Miller was Lynette's pimp and boyfriend. Tony Miller is his brother, I believe. Yusuf Abdullahi, Ronnie Actie, and Rashid Omar and Martin Tucker. So they were just fucking arresting, like going mad.
Same as my story. It was just like, you're black, get in the car.
Exactly. So John Actie and Tony Paris were arrested on the 9th of December. No forensic evidence had been found to link any of those men to the crime scene.
Man.
Nothing at all. So on the 10th...
I mean, think about it. They have 150 choices as well. If they're not in that pool of choices...
I know!
From all the fingerprints, clearly...
Yeah, I don't know where you get the brass ring piece to just pick people up at random. But, and also, like, her boyfriend, Stephen Miller, he had a really solid alibi as well, and they still picked him up. So on the 10th of December, police found out that Angela Pasalia's blood type was AB, as in the girl who had an IQ of 55.
Okay.
So they re-interviewed her the following day, and they told her that it was her blood at the crime scene. Angela then told the police that she was there with all the men that were already arrested, and she said that Vilde had cut Lynette's throat.
My hand is on my face right now.
She would just say anything. Like, she would just say anything you wanted to say.
It's
she
just
just wants to
sad.
get out of there and watch WrestleMania. So... Yeah, so Vilde then gave a statement on the same day naming Stephen Miller, Ronnie and John Actie, Abdullahi and Paris as the new killers, and saying that she and Celia had both been forced to cut one of White's wrists to ensure their complicity and silence. So this is a
That sounds
fucking shit show.
ridiculous.
Yeah, they're like, oh my god,
Yeah,
if you don't cut her wrist, like, we're gonna fucking tell them, like, what? So yeah, this is
right.
crazy. Again, Stephen Miller, who's the boyfriend, who had a mental age of 11, so he's also
Mm,
Brendan Dassey kind of situation. He was interviewed
man,
on 19 occasions for 13 hours over 4 days with no
wow.
legal help for the first two interviews. He denied
No.
he denied the murder over 300 times and then he eventually admitted to it and implicated the other men.
This really is like the Welsh version of making a murderer.
Mhm. It's just stupid. So
Yeah.
on the 5th of October 1989, the trial started at Swansea Court, and after 82 days of evidence, I'm sorry, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's like, fuck me, what else is going to happen? The, ju-
Right.
the
What's
judge had a,
next?
the judge had a heart attack and they had to restart the trial
uh,
after 82 days.
look, guys. Clearly, the universe is against you on this, trying to
Ah,
implicate these people. Maybe you
okay.
should take a different approach and look elsewhere.
Everybody back to prison. We're going to start
Yeah.
again. Like, on the
No.
14th of May 1990, it started again with a new judge. And
Oh, man.
that time, so it lasted 197 days. And
Wow.
at the time it was like the longest trial in English history, or like British history.
Wow.
On the 22nd of November 1990, three of the five accused were found guilty. Tony Paris, Youssef Abdullahi, and Stephen Miller, who became known as the Cardiff Three, were given life
Mm.
imprisonment. Cousins Ronnie and John Actie were acquitted, so that's good.
Okay.
Those were the two mixed race guys that she said she saw outside the flat. They just
Mm.
have nothing to place them in the flat. So
Good. I mean,
then
at least there's that.
yeah, so there's the Cardiff Three basically that were imprisoned wrongly. In September 2007, Ronnie was found dead in his back garden, and police said there were no suspicious circumstances. So he was one of the guys
What?
that was found innocent. He just died in 2007.
Oh.
So it could, I don't know, it could, like, I guess there's people who think that's a cover up, and there's some people that think it's not. So
Yeah.
in 1991, a number of journalists, again, this is really similar to yours, a number of journalists began to question the convictions on a program on Channel 4. And in
Mm.
May 1991, two of the convicted men were granted leave to appeal their convictions, but the third, Stephen Miller, was refused. Journalist Satish Sekar, specialising in crime, tracked down two witnesses that were not called to the trial, again, really similar to yours, who
Yeah.
could provide an alibi for Stephen. Sekar persuaded prestigious solicitor Gareth Pearce to take on the case and appeal. The public also started a petition to overturn the convictions. It was started by friends and family of the accused. So the appeal was heard in December of 1992, and they heard tapes of Miller's confession. And a judge deemed that short of physical violence, it's hard to conceive of a more hostile and intimidating approach by officers to a suspect. So all three
Yeah.
men had their convictions declared unsafe and they were released.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
That's good.
yeah, in September 2000, the case was reopened and detectives discovered fresh evidence. So
Oh, finally.
someone with half a fucking brain in their nut decided to have a look at it.
Yeah.
So this included there was a small speck of blood on a cellophane wrapper from a cigarette packet and 10
Okay.
traces of the same blood underneath several layers of paint on a skirting board. At the crime scene,
Wow.
they cracked off
Wow.
paint to find blood. How
So did they
crazy.
go back?
Yeah, they
They
went
went
back to the
back there.
flat.
Wow, and it's still like everything's I mean not everything's still there, but
They
like
just painted
there's
over old blood
blood still
stains.
under this. Wow.
Yeah, so they were like, "Fuck it, let's get this." So, um,
Yeah.
they couldn't find anybody that was like on the database, so nobody had committed a crime. that matched that blood.
That matched the blood? Okay.
Yeah. And they dubbed the guy Cellophane Man because they didn't know his name. So
Okay.
2 years later,
Sounds like a shitty superhero.
it really does. Hey, is that food going off? Here I am.
It's Cellophane Man to
It's
save the
Cellophane
day.
Man. Want anyone to piss on a toilet seat and it spray all over them? It's Cellophane Man. Right. So they developed like a really good DNA profile 2 years later using something called an SGM test, which I'm not going to go into because fuck me, this story is long enough. So we'll
Yeah.
think about that another time. But I'm
Okay.
guessing it's just a way to increase the amount of DNA you have so that you have enough to make a profile.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Sure.
so they used familial DNA, just like they did with the Golden State Killer.
Ooh, amazing.
And a partial match was made with a 14-year-old boy who was known to the police, but he hadn't even been born at the time of the murder.
Okay.
So they were like,
Okay.
okay, he's related to you. So
Yeah.
it's either your dad or your uncle.
Mm.
So this led to an arrest on the 28th of February 2003 of the boy's uncle, Jeffrey Gaffor. On the 4th of July 2003 at Cardiff Crown Court, he pled guilty to Lynette's murder and got life imprisonment. This isn't very good though, with a minimum tariff of 12 years and 8 months.
Oh.
Considering what he did and the fact that he lied about it all that time,
Yeah, and
he
he
only
got
got
away
12
with it
years.
for so
That's,
long.
yeah.
So wait, who is he?
Okay, so he lives in a place called, I'm assuming because it's double L, it's Llanharan in
Okay.
Welsh.
Yeah.
So he's 38 when he's arrested, which means that he was 24 when he did it.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
he was arrested at his house. At the time of the murder, he was a security guard at his family's shop in Roath. Apparently, he was a customer of Lynette's, and they had an argument
Mm.
over the payment of £30, and then he just went fucking postal.
What?
And that's the
All
only
of
thing
this
he ever did.
for 30 pounds. What?
Because he never got caught. Well, he never got caught for anything else because he didn't even have a driving conviction. He had nothing.
Wow.
How scary is that?
That's insane. So it's one of those cases where somebody does something and then they just never speak of it again. And
Yeah.
wow.
And then he's
That's rare.
yeah. We've seen it before though. We've done it before, haven't we? Where a guy,
Yeah,
he like
definitely.
stabbed a girl when she was walking home and her boyfriend was like, "Oh, you be
Yeah.
okay?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'll be fine." And then he raped her like brutally, stabbed her to death, and then never did anything else.
Yeah.
And was arrested as an old man. Petrifying.
Just also imagine the guilt that you would have, one, for murdering someone,
no
and
guilt at all,
two,
though. Well, you wouldn't do it.
but he let other people be arrested. All those
Yeah.
people. How can you live with yourself?
Pretty easy, looks like. So
I guess
anyway,
so.
he's in prison, right? So that's good. So
Okay.
that happened in 2003, and then in 2004, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, which is basically toilet paper, began a review. So
Okay.
on the 13th of April 2005, 5 retired police officers were arrested in connection for false
Good.
imprisonment. Yeah, it is good. False imprisonment, conspiring to pervert the course of justice, and misconduct in a public office. Over
Wow.
30 arrests were made by November,
Mm-hmm.
and that includes like members of the public that gave false statements, everybody who gave a false statement, all the officers involved. And then in
Wow.
2007, 3 of the prosecution witnesses were convicted of perjury and sent to prison for 18 months. In December 2008, 3 of the accused, Angela Pasalia, Leanne Vilde, and Mark Gromek, were found guilty of committing perjury. So Angela Pasalia was the girl with the low IQ. Leanne Vilde
Yeah.
was the woman who gave her the key to her house. And Mark Gromek was
Right.
the guy who lived above. So
Okay.
they were found of committing perjury and each sentenced to 18 months. The
Wow.
fourth, Paul Atkins, who was the other gay guy, he was deemed unfit to stand trial. I'm not sure
Okay.
why. He must have been really ill or crazy. In March 2009, 3 serving officers and 10 former officers were charged with con- conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. 2 further witnesses in the original trial were charged with perjury. On the 28th of November 2011, the judge ordered the prosecution to produce him a number of specific documents, but these could not be found and had been destroyed. So the
Oh,
trial collapsed.
what?
So that by the time this had happened, all of the police officers that had been charged were allowed to retire. So
Oh, man.
the members of the public that lied all went to prison for 18 months. The police all got off with it because they couldn't find these
Oh,
documents. And
no.
then get this. In January 2012, the missing documents were found, still in the original box in which they had been sent to the police.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Okay, so Jeffrey, the murderer, the real murderer,
Yeah.
as of September 2021, he's in an open prison and he's now up for parole. His probation officer advised that a gradual return to the community would be needed, using temporary releases to allow Mr. Gafford to be thoroughly tested. Oh, what, you're going to wait till he murders someone else?
Yeah.
And to
Just
accommodate,
sit around and what?
yeah, and to accommodate to the eventual needs of a release on life license. So he'll always be on license. He'll always have to be in at a certain time. He'll always have to tell the police where he is.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it only takes 5 seconds to slit someone's throat,
Yeah.
and you can't stop him having knives.
But he didn't do anything from the initial murder until he was arrested. So
You reckon that's why he got such a good sentence?
possibly, it just, is he gonna murder someone else? I don't know. It doesn't sound likely just because it sounds like, I don't know if he was like good,
He stabbed her 69
between that
times.
time.
He almost cut her head off.
Yeah. Right.
If he had just, like, I don't know, maybe like strangled her or punched her in the face and like knocked her out, or I don't know, but like that's brutal.
It is brutal.
What he did was crazy behavior.
Yeah.
In no way could it be an accident.
Did he have any kind of remorse or anything like that during his trial, or?
I'm assuming that he's been a model prisoner, or he wouldn't be in an open prison and he wouldn't be up for parole.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the story of Lynette White.
Wow. And what did you
And
call it? The Cardiff Three?
yeah, so they're called the Cardiff Three, the people who are wrongly convicted. And if you want to listen to the BBC podcast, which I'm going to try again because I was kind of sleepy when I was listening to it and I fell asleep, but it's called A Killing in Tiger Bay.
Okay. Yeah.
Basically, the
I'll
whole
give it a
point of
listen.
the podcast was that it was a really racist area. So it's no surprise that they were like, probably black people's fault.
Yeah.
Somebody said that and somebody else went, that's a good idea. I'm just going to run with it. But
It just happens so often. It happens so much.
they try and establish that, but they do it for like 4 episodes and you're like, I get it. So that's my only criticism of the BBC like podcast.
Okay.
But that poor woman, poor Lynette White.
Yeah. Wow. And it sounds like she didn't really have much family, so
Oh, dude, she had a
just
shit
sad.
life.
Yeah.
Shit life. Sex work from 12 until 22 and a cokehead pimp boyfriend. And then you get
Yeah.
murdered. Really?
Sad.
Okay, how can we cheer this up?
Let's see. I've been listening to a podcast, The Maintenance Phase. It's a
Ooh.
little bit of a lighter podcast than true crime, but this specific podcast is about, did you watch Super Size Me, the documentary?
Yeah.
It was a huge documentary when it came out.
Yeah. And it never put me off
And they
McDonald's one bit.
Well, they just kind of debunk everything that went into that film, and
Really?
it's specific for me too, because when I studied documentary in film school, it was just like, this is like the epitome of like a successful documentary. It won a bunch of awards. It was up for an
Mhm.
Oscar. He made tons of money from it. He just got really well known from it. And they talk about, there's a lot of fat shaming in the film,
Oh
which we
God,
don't
yeah.
think about. There's just
It would be weird
a
to watch
lot
it
of like,
now. I
it really
think.
would. It doesn't stand up. It really doesn't.
No, I don't think it would either.
Yeah.
Because
So I would just recommend that if you want like a little bit of a lighter, it's still kind of, it's not exactly true crime, but they really dig into debunking things. It's called The Maintenance Phase, and that specific episode is just called Super Size Me,
oh my God,
and they
I'm
talk
so
about it,
listening
and
to
it's
that.
great.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I've been listening to This Actually Happened. Have you seen that
Ooh,
advertised?
no.
So it's like this, it's kind of like This American Life, but like, in This American Life, you get all those annoying in between bits, or
Yeah.
not every
Yes.
episode is good, or like you don't
Yeah.
really know what you're gonna get. Whereas like with This Is Actually Happening, the title of the show is exactly what you get. So like
Okay.
the title of the show would be like, "What if I had a psychotic break?" And then it's like a
Yeah.
woman who tells a story of her psychotic break, or like,
Yeah.
what if you found out like the
Wow.
worst thing ever? And it's like this woman finds out that her husband had like child sexual material on his phone and he was a
Mm.
teacher. It's just,
Yeah.
and like, because I'm a bit like, I've got a bit of like, what's it called? Schadenfreude. Like, where I like stuff where people's lives are shitter than mine. I love listening to stuff where I can go, well, at least that's not me. Like,
Yeah. At least that hasn't happened.
I am all about that. So if your life is
Yeah.
a fucking shit show, then listen to This Is Actually Happening, because people on there are like, Christ, that sounds awful.
Well, it sounds like it's interesting as well to just listen to that, and that's what I always think about, the psychology of like what would you actually do? It makes you think about, what would I
Yeah.
do in this situation, and what would my immediate reaction be? You don't know, and it's interesting to hear someone's reactions and feelings. That sounds really interesting. I'm
It's
definitely
so
going to
good.
listen to
And
that.
you can really cherry pick as well.
Mm,
And also,
okay.
like, I just really like it when you know what you're getting out of a podcast from the title.
Yes, me too.
Well, it's really annoying. Like, I try and find that episode of Criminal all the time where somebody had the episode of Criminal where someone's living in their loft and they don't know about it. I try and find that episode all the
Ooh.
time, but it's not called I Had Somebody Living in My Loft. It's called like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
they're
what the
really
fuck it's
like
called.
ambiguous with their titles.
Yeah, you have to listen to it to find out. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Just tell
Yeah,
me what I'm listening to. So yeah,
right.
that's what I'm doing.
Great. Well, I hope we raised the mood a little bit there. If any of our listeners want to recommend anything for us to watch or
Please
listen
do.
to, and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And do sign up to our Patreon, because we're going to talk about the Tinder swindler and
We
other,
fucking
I
are.
think, romantic
Please.
swindlers. Yes. Let's do
Yes.
it.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Transatlantic Crime this week. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe.
And if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at TransatCrimePod, Instagram at Transatlantic Crime, and on Facebook with Transatlantic Crime Podcast.
Thanks, bye.